What's up, everybody? Welcome to Words with Israel. Today, I wanted to talk about Christian standards and how I think that Christian standards have dropped and that liberty has gone far enough, I think, in this day and age. And there's a need to return to more traditional values instead of always moving things to sort of keep up with the times. I think evangelicalism often fights to stay relevant, right? So they need to tweak things to keep up with the times. And what I believe is that it's gone too far, and there's a need to return to more traditional ways. I believe a good time was around the 1900s or the late 1800s. And I'm talking about in terms of dating, in terms of clothing, in terms of behavior, in terms of conduct, in terms of just our choices of entertainment, and how there is just too much there's been too much liberty that has gone around. And I'm quite surprised at how that Christians and Christian ministries have not been as opposed to some of the things that I think they should be opposed to. I was quite shocked when I came across Focus on the Family. God bless them. But these are areas that I disagree in. So when it comes to, topics of, dating, for example. Dating, I think, started during the late 1800s or the early 1900s, and it was a lot more cleaner. People just kind of date leisurely, and I think that can be problematic. There's the middle school, high school boyfriend, girlfriend thing where it's holding hands, kissing, driving your girl around, going to the movies, dates, break up, and then move on to a new person. It's very modern compared to most history. Modern is to go on casual dates with multiple people, move together first and use apps like Tinder. Before that, teens had far less freedom, and there were stricter parents, fewer chances to be alone. There were no cars. Marriage happened younger in many eras, and I think that it has gone too far. And so, there's no question people have always been human. People have always been sinners. There's no question about that. But I don't think that the shift in the standard helps anything. There's a Christian actress. God bless her. She loves the Lord, but something that's always been extremely controversial is the fact that she kisses on set. It's part of the acting role. And I always thought that if your job requires you to do something like that, maybe you should find a different job. That was the standard that I had felt, and she's been a very controversial person in the spotlight. She loves the Lord, but she's also left an impact on people that, it's quite trifling, And then there's Liberty University that gave Sean Lowe a platform to speak because he got married. Now, Sean Lowe was a contestant on The Bachelor, who was a Christian and had gone through all the process in order to come out with a spouse or get married at the end of the show. And he did just about everything. I don't think that there was much that he had done that was set apart from a non-believer, any secular person. He looked pretty similar and that's the problem, I think, is like with people is there's, they look at the positives, and we should look at the positives, no doubt, but these are the things that are extremely problematic, and they need to be addressed. When you see people competing on shows like that, where is the opinion that don't do it at all? Don't do it at all. If something requires you to do these types of things, maybe you shouldn't do it at all. If Taylor Swift or Rome Chappelle or is playing music that is sinful in nature, maybe you shouldn't listen to it at all. And the thing about Focus on the Family is that it holds a position that you can do enough of it and still not be sinning. If you listen to it or look at it or participate in something with the right motives, we won't stop it completely. And I don't know if that view is always right. I understand what they're saying. It's like you can't stop people. You can't tell them no. You can't say no. And I would argue against that is because there are some things where you can just say no to. There has to be a standard that is wrong completely and you should not be doing it. And I've argued things like maybe The Bachelor, watching the TV show, listening to certain pop music, attending gay weddings. That's another one. I think that Christians, they're arguing for being able to attend gay weddings in order to keep the relationship with the couple. And I would say no. I think attending gay weddings is a form of support, and a Christian shouldn't participate. It shouldn't be attending a gay wedding. Show your love and support for the couple in a different way. Show the love of Christ for them in a different way. That's what I believe. And so those are just some things is where I would call out evangelicalism, is that it doesn't place a barrier on things and say it shouldn't be done at all. Some people do, but Focus on the Family certainly hasn't. Liberty University certainly hasn't. And I think that it should. And so another thing that I think we should also get at, so we talked about dating, we've talked about choices of entertainment. What about clothing? Clothing has gotten more provocative over time. Used to be that bikinis were actually became mainstream back in 1946 after World War II. It was part of a sexual revolution, and so were crop tops. They came out in the 1960s as part of a sexual revolution, and they were aimed at being just a bit more provocative. That was a form of clothing. Back before that, if you had seen pictures of what women wore as bathing suits, it was far less provocative than it is right now. I mean, that's what I'm saying is like where standards, shift, it becomes less decent. And I think that decency is almost called for as a Christian. The Bible puts a lot of emphasis on decency. And I'll bring up some of those verses with you in just a little bit. But when it comes to forms of clothing, we have an enemy in this world. And the Bible teaches that things will get worse. That's how the devil works in this world. He has dominion over the world. And with a world that hates God, is in rebellion against God, you can only imagine how things get worse. And you can only imagine how standards get looser as well. Morals get more and more loose. And I think that is very problematic. I think that it has gone far enough. And if we keep going further, we might go off the cliff. And then Christianity, you don't want something else coming in that was previously considered sinful and now all of a sudden it's adopted, right? You just don't want that. Evangelicalism is always trying to keep up with the times, fighting to stay relevant. And I get that. I would consider myself a Protestant Christian. Like, I love the Lord, but I don't know about evangelicalism. That's the thing, is I don't know about Christian liberty. I think there is a real need to say stop. We're going too far, and let's return to more traditional ways. I really do believe that. And I'll give you my impression of dating before I realized it was neutral. Is that I grew up with the impression that kind of teenagers dating was inappropriate, and that you gotta go to college, you gotta get settled, you do all those things, and then when you're ready for marriage, then you can consider dating. The Bible teaches that the love of most will grow cold. Evil men and seducers will wax worse, and deceivers will wax worse. Things get worse. Those verses indicate that things get worse. And standards, clothing standards, behavior, conduct, our choices of entertainment, they are getting worse. And that is proof that the devil is at work. And as people consider it an improvement, I say less decency is ungodly. I know from the world's standpoint, there isn't much you can do. You can't change the world. You can't do much, but Christians can set themselves apart and they don't have to do that. Just some of the choices of activity is like where, there's such a thing as graduation high school trips where girls and boys go on these graduation trips somewhere. And then there's shirtless guys, there's girls in bikinis on beaches. There can be, that kind of just looks quite hedonistic. It looks like a party setting. And I think that almost doesn't look good on Christianity. It doesn't look as decent, I think, as it could be. That's what I think. And the Bible teaches, here's some Bible verses: let no one despise your youth, but be an example in speech and conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. Flee youthful lusts, youthful passions, pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace. So women should adorn themselves in modest apparel, right? With modesty and self-control, right? Humility. That's what it's saying. And chaste. The Bible talks about chasteness. Keepers at home. The Bible says, women should be keepers at home, self-controlled, pure, working at home. That's how we are to conduct ourselves in relationships within the body of Christ, is that treat younger men as brothers, treat younger women as sisters in all purity, right? Treat just as you treat elders as fathers, and the women as mothers. I know that there are Christians who disagree, but I think we can all agree that if Satan has dominion over this world, there is a need to return to more decent standards, right? Here's what I think if it's allowed. Don't impose it on others. Do it off to the side. I'm not interested in it. Obviously, this stuff has always been going on, right? People have always been human and sinful, but just the adoption of it and making it mainstream is fairly new. Dating in and of itself has been an extra layer that's been added to courtship, and the standard has changed so much that the century has gone through multiple changes. As I said before, dating is a extra layer that's been added on those things. So again, these are just my thoughts. Let me say that I'm not going to say dating is wrong, but I say that what people do, where they're as young as 11 years old, holding hands, kissing people who are not serious about marriage, and there's dating non-believers. Christians date non-believers because they almost justify it. There used to be a certain way of dating, and that's been changed, and that I just think the standards have gotten a lot more worse with time. This is something that I believe that I've been impacted by, and I think that it has a lot of merit. I think that there is a tremendous need to recognize how the enemy works and how the world works too. We have three enemies: the world, the flesh, and the devil. And we understand how those operate. They move further and further away from God, and that includes in terms of culture, that includes in terms of standards, that includes decency standards, that includes our choices of entertainment, that includes what we think is allowed and not allowed, that includes just our clothing, that includes our conduct. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Like and subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what your thoughts are. This is Joel on the Words with Israel podcast. God bless you. See you on the next episode.